Paradise has finally returned after a year's wait, and with this being one of my favourite TV series from last year, I was so ready for those first 3 episodes. At first, I was surprised that we got 3, but with the new characters that we were introduced to and us seeing a different perspective of the world before the catastrophe that occurred with the supervolcanic eruption, with the same song that played in the premiere of Season 1 rounding off Episode 3 of this new season, it felt just right. After these 3 episodes, there were a couple of questions that I was left with going round in my mind, and that was, who is Alex, and what is Sinatra's secret side project that she's taking power from the main bunker for? Well, let's dive into it. Here is Paradise Season 2, Episodes 1 to 3, Ending Explained. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. The importance of Episode 1. The first episode of the season, which was titled Graceland, was an episode that I was really impressed with. What it served as in my mind was a way of showing us the different experiences that humans go through on a day-to-day basis throughout life, and that even in that short amount of time, the 689 days that Annie was there, you can experience many of them. For example, we saw themes of love, pain, intimacy, care, loneliness, grief, fear, and the desire to be safe through both Annie, the nurse that we were introduced to that seems like she's going to be at the core of this season, and also Link, the person that she grew close to inside of Graceland. Annie was a character that actually preferred life after the devastation, because in a world that had everybody in it, she didn't quite know where she belonged. This was seen following her mother dying, her having anxiety, that same anxiety that her mother had, and it driving her to quit her training as a student nurse. Elvis said that Graceland was the only place in the world that he ever felt safe, and that was the case for Annie too. So I found it fitting that it was a place that she ended up hunkering down in when the world was quite literally falling apart. Annie cared for her mother when she was younger, and Graceland was a place that they'd often go to together until she started going there on her own. We didn't see much of her mother, other than when she was bound to her living room, but there were hints to the fact that she used to be a nurse or studied in the medical field because she was a doctor of medicine. This was also supported when Link said to Annie that he thought that she was so smart, and she responded and said that her mother was the smart one. So I imagine we're going to learn more about the importance of Annie's mother and the influence that she had as the episodes go on. In going back to the theme of human experiences and emotions being at the core of this episode, there was a piece of dialogue that Cal Bradford said as the emergency was happening, which was, "Despite all the ugliness in the world, despite our tendencies to focus on the grotesque, the conflict, you are inherently decent." With this also being spoken as we saw Annie panicking, it's going to connect to the fact that after the second episode, when we saw her holding Xavier at gunpoint and demanding that he took her to Colorado, she is decent at her core, and the way that she acts isn't going to be who she truly is. We've seen how good of a person she is with the care that she gave to Gale when she was dying. This is why I also think Link and his group arriving and it being made out like they were going to kill her was what was front of mind. This is because in those situations, that's what we'd come to expect, but by thinking the worst in those around you, it doesn't necessarily mean that they are. The loneliness that Annie felt since Gale's death was brought to light with the fact that a simple hug and an embrace with Link brought her to tears. She hadn't been hugged in such a long time or felt any kind of affection, so it showed the weight of the smallest human things. When Unchained Melody was playing and the lyrics "Time can do so much" was being paired with the scars on Link's body being visible, they were lyrics which really connected to the fact that time had been cruel to Link, and it also showed those negative traits that can be present in humans. As well, the lyrics "I need your love" were also being sung as Annie was with him, so I feel it supported the fact that she was deprived of that very emotion. Within this episode, we overheard Geiger say to Link before they left that the place that they were headed towards was heavily fortified, that they had manpower, and once they got in there, they'd be looking for somebody called Alex, whom they planned on killing. They knew that there was an underground city in Colorado, which we know as Paradise, and by killing this person called Annie, they thought that it would restart the world. Annie couldn't bring herself to go with Link because she was somebody who was most comfortable when in solitude, but as we saw when the final few scenes were developing, the song "I Can't Help Falling in Love with You" was playing. So it showed that she was in love with Link, but as time went on, we also saw that she was pregnant with his child. With Link leaving a note saying that he'd return for her, we saw that following an explosion going off in the background, Annie rode over to it, and it turned out that it was Xavier who had crashed into the heart of Arkansas. It was a pocket of Arkansas that Link had told Annie to avoid because it was considered to be dangerous following all of the people coming back out after the temperatures then started to rise. So with her rescuing him, we saw the end of Season 1 merge with the character that we learned all about at the beginning of Season 2. We found out in the third episode that following the supervolcanic eruption, the ash that would engulf the sky would cause the temperatures to drop by around 20 degrees, and then the world would return to normal after it eventually warmed up. However, it would just be a false sense of security. This is because the planet wouldn't be back to normal, it would only be phase 1 of the devastation. The planet would essentially continue to increase in temperature until the air became thick, the oceans would evaporate, and what essentially happened on Venus would occur on Earth. This would mean that anybody still around on the outside would wish that they died on day 1, so the likes of Annie and the other survivors that are above ground don't know what's heading their way. The importance of Episode 2. Within the second episode, we saw it pick up from the end of the Season 1 finale, with Xavier inside of the plane as it was crashing down over a forest in Arkansas. This episode allowed us to see the dangerous side of civilization that had merged out there that Link spoke about, but what I feel this episode served as was an important piece that showed us why Xavier was so in love with his wife and how they came to be the item that they were. We saw them when they first met, and the motif that kept running through Xavier's mind was when Teri had lost her vision following an operation and she was worried if her vision was ever going to return. Within this, we saw the love and care that Xavier had for her, as even though he didn't know her, he was by her bedside getting everything ready for her and making sure that she was okay. The motif "come here" being spoken by Teri was what Xavier kept hearing in the present day as he was in and out of consciousness from the crash in the plane, from when he mended his knee in the same way that he did when he was in the Secret Service training, and also when he woke up after being rescued by Annie. The likes of Daniel and the other children that rescued him in the episode felt like a way of showing us that the kids on the outside have been exposed to things in life that he couldn't possibly come to terms with, such as the sheer amount of death. This was highlighted on 2 specific occasions. One was when they buried the body of the person that was hunting them down and tried to kill Xavier, and the other was when Xavier went to read them a story and one of them responded and asked if they could have his jacket once he died. So it showed that the kids on the outside weren't like normal kids because of what they'd been exposed to. They had survival instincts and were looking out for themselves because in that world, you just can't trust anybody. So that's why they made off with his bag at the end, because they took what they needed for themselves. With Xavier being saved by Annie and him mentioning that he was originally from Colorado, a hidden bunker that was there, she wanted him to take her there so that she could be reunited with Link, the father of her unborn baby. She doesn't know if he's dead or alive, but like what Xavier was doing to find the person that was at the start of his love story, she now wanted to do the same, but for her. Who is Alex and what is Sinatra's plan? During the third episode, we got some Billy, which I'm glad about because he was a great character in the first season and I didn't think we'd see him again. And we actually saw Sinatra and Billy's first encounter, which was when she wanted a certain somebody to sign over their company to her, and if they didn't, then she wanted him dead. The code that Billy told her to say was that the person that she wanted dead needed a breath mint, and with that being revealed to us during the ending, it then jumped into my mind that she said that about President Baines needing one during her interrogation, which Jane heard and then carried out when the president was killed whilst out on a run. This is also why she pinned it on Agent Robinson, because she knew that she was suspicious of her and that she'd get in the way of the blame being passed on to Xavier. In the 1 month that Sinatra was out, we saw that President Baines was essentially running a dictatorship where if anybody went against him, then he'd send them to a prison camp that was deep below paradise. This is where Jeremy was sent, and also the creator of the bunker, and with there being rebellions against those in power at Paradise, they were being sent there if they were caught. So Jeremy seemingly now wants to blow the doors off the bunker and lead the people in his own way. However, as we know, that might not be the best outcome because of the next phase that could occur outside with the heat increasing. There were questions around Sinatra siphoning power out of the main bunker and into a side project that she could have been working on, and the person that was involved in this project was called Alex, the very person that Link & Co were planning on taking out. So the question is, who is Alex? Well, the only person that we were introduced to in the show called Alex so far was the wife of the person that Billy killed. She was given a substance before he was killed, so it makes me wonder if what she was given is actually the very thing that he was working on and what Sinatra actually wanted. There was this whole speech that he gave on if things happened for a reason or if they were just by chance, and with him handing Billy a tissue because he knew that he was going to have a nosebleed, the project that he must have been working on makes me question if it's got something to do with predicting future events or knowing the outcome of what could be on the horizon. This is a sci-fi show after all. However, a more realistic thought makes me think back to when there was a large focus on Sinatra being told that the one thing that she couldn't buy as a billionaire was time. And with Alex having Huntington's disease and her potentially still being alive all of those years later, if what her husband gave him didn't actually kill her, I wonder if what he was working on was to keep her alive or aim to cure her in some way, which would ultimately be time. There was a protege that was working with him who Billy let survive, so I'm also wondering if this could actually be Alex and maybe they're being referred to as something completely different so that if anything does get picked up, like what Gabby was doing when she gave Sinatra that photo frame that was actually a secret listing device, they'd be expecting somebody completely different. I feel like the protege would have something to do with what's going on, so I'm expecting to see them working on this side project that they were heavily involved in founding. My review of the episode. I thought the first 3 episodes of this season were really good. I'm a massive Dan Fogelman fan, and this has all the makings of a great Dan Fogelman show from the off. From the way that the stories are told with the different passages of time, the emotion that they're able to convey, and the score that's at the heart of it. They're just creative choices that work so well in amplifying the experience of watching this story. For example, I loved the passage of time at the end of episode 1, seeing the events of the disaster taking place from a different perspective. The choice of having the wind being the loudest part of the scene when Annie was burying Gail, the visual effect on Link when he was passing out, and the contrast in sound and visuals when it would often cut. It's storytelling like no other, and I think Fogelman is one of the best at his unique style. The first episode being completely different, in a different environment, and with brand new characters was a brave move, but it worked so well. I feel like I truly understand Annie, and I'm actually excited to see more of her on the screen because of the level of understanding that we got from her in such a short time. She was also performed so well, and I bought the pain that she lived with in isolation and the loss that she experienced with her mother and also Gail. Sterling K. Brown just makes me think of Randall from This Is Us, and that's probably why I love the character. But Xavier Collins exhibits similar traits to Randall, and there's a strong likability due to the connection to his family and the desire that he has to be the person that looks out for others. At first, I was concerned as to why they gave us 3 episodes in 1 week, but we really did need that 3rd episode to get truly started in season 2. The first 2 felt like they provided a good backdrop, but the 3rd one really progressed it forward, so I'm glad we had it. Like I said at the start of my video, this is a show that was one of my favourites last year, and I'm so glad it's back. So with 5 episodes to go, we've got just over a month in this world of paradise. So, there you have it, Paradise Season 2 Episodes 1 to 3 Ending Explained. If you want to see more videos on Paradise, then check the playlist below. I broke down Season 1 and I'll be covering the entirety of Season 2, so be sure to subscribe. What did you think of the first 3 episodes? Share your thoughts in the comments. As always, thanks for tuning into the video and I'll see you in the next one.